Okay. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Top 3 Tips to Beat EMF and Feel Great Flying and Traveling. As always, I know that you have a lot of things going on in your life, and so I and the whole SYB team really appreciate the time that you've set aside to spend with us today in this live webinar. So a quick outline of what we'll be covering today. We'll do intros. That'll be really quick. Most of you, I think, know who we are at this point, but it's also useful to give an extra minute for people to arrive into the meeting. Then we'll get into the main content. That'll last about 30 minutes. Then, as usual, I will have a special offer for all of you attending live. And then we will have live Q&A where Cathy will be answering all of your questions. So very briefly about me, my name is R. Blank. I'm the CEO of SYB and the host of the Healthier Tech podcast, available on Apple Music, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms. Formerly taught on the faculty of the University of Southern California School of Engineering. And along with my father, Dr. Martin Blank, co-authored Overpowered about the science of EMF health effects. We wanted to do this webinar today because as we are entering summer travel season, we are again hearing from an increasing number of people from all over the world about how difficult it has become to travel, and specifically to travel by flight. It's literally one of the top 3 things that my customer service team is asked about. The increasing amount of electronic and radio frequency devices that you're exposed to in a very confined space has increased exponentially in the last few years. Even without these exposures, flying is inherently unhealthy and foreign to what the human body is designed to understand and cope with. The human body is simply not meant to move through space at several hundred miles per hour across multiple time zones in a matter of minutes and sit inside a chair inside a metal box at 30,000 feet. But of course, we live in the modern world, and this type of travel has become a normal part of our lives, a very convenient one. Many of us live very far from friends and family, and we'd like to see them. Many people need to travel for work, for healthcare, and for some people, traveling is a passion. There are several reasons why sometimes we need to get on a plane. And because of that, we wanted to share with you how you can do that more comfortably, how to protect your body, and how to enjoy your journey with more health and vitality. And for that, we called on our senior consultant, Cathy Cooke, to help us out. I know this topic is a passion for her, and as I suspected, she has a load of information to share with all of you. For those of you who don't know, Cathy is board certified in holistic nutrition, as well as a certified building biology environmental consultant and certified electromagnetic radiation specialist with the Building Biology Institute. Cathy's certifications cover a lot of syllables. In her practice, she assesses buildings for anything that may be causing health problems. This includes indoor air quality, mold, chemical off-gassing, ventilation, combustible gas products, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, radon, and of course, EMF exposure. And she's combined holistic nutrition and building biology to address both the body and the environment to help her clients and SYB's customers achieve optimal health. Cathy lives in Boise, Idaho, and you can check out her website at wholehomeandbodyhealth.com. Now, Cathy is in the room with us right now. But as we've done with all of our webinars this year, which it's new for us this year, but we pre-recorded the presentation so that she and I can participate in the chat the entire time. So then when that presentation of the main information is done, we will have a Q&A session to answer all of your questions. That Q&A session will be live. So if you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the Q&A pod, not the chat pod. The chat pod is just for chatting, but if you want your questions answered during the Q&A session, make sure to type them into the Q&A pod, because if they're in the chat pod, they will get lost. So with that, give me 1 second here, please, to get us started.
And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this topic today. I am so pleased to be here with the fantastic Shield Your Body community again today to bring you some excellent information. I'm so excited to be speaking about this topic because it is one that I am very passionate about. And the reason as well, because I really don't like flying. So don't get me wrong, I love to visit other parts of the world and experience new cultures and new places, but I just don't like the act of getting there. It's the part of traveling that has always been challenging for me. I find it to be quite stressful with the early morning flights, the tight confined spaces, poor quality food choices, the recycled air, rushing to catch flights, often questionable lodging, then you got to rent a car. I mean, it's just all of the things that can be really stressful when you're traveling. And as we all know, in the last few years, we can add a huge EMF exposure to the list. Not only are we sitting in a metal box in the sky, but our seatmates, well, they're probably wearing wireless earbuds. Maybe they have their phone on or the Wi-Fi on their phone or their tablet. They're wearing a smartwatch and, who knows what else. So for those of us that are sensitive to EMF, this can cause a lot of symptoms. And for some of us, it can make flying completely impossible. And even for those of us that aren't especially sensitive, we're still getting bombarded with human-made EMFs that can leave us feeling groggy, confused, irritable, impatient, weaken our immune system, and cause loads of oxidative stress. So for many of us, it can feel like it's just not worth it. And if you're like me, you avoid air travel at all costs. But there are times when we can't avoid it. Or some of us fly regularly and we just want to be healthier and feel better while we do it. And that's why we wanted to bring you some really great tips on how to do just that. So let's take a quick second to look at some health statistics regarding flying. When I was digging into the science regarding how flying and EMFs impact the body, I found some pretty interesting and somewhat alarming information. So there's a few studies you can find online that speak to the long-term health outcomes of flight personnel. In one study, flight attendants recorded more health problems than the general population, which is probably not much of a surprise. Not only do they have very stressful jobs, but they experience constant sleep challenges from altered time zones, constantly challenged and changing circadian rhythms, several known and possible carcinogens, including chemicals from the airplane, but they're also exposed to cosmic radiation on a daily basis. Now, cosmic radiation is a naturally occurring electromagnetic field, but being so close to it is not. You're inside a metal box 30,000 feet in the air. So prolonged exposure to cosmic radiation in conjunction with the bombardment of human-made EMFs very likely has some negative health implications. And according to the Harvard Flight Attendant Health Study, flight attendants had a higher prevalence of every cancer that was examined, especially breast cancer, melanoma, and non-melanoma skin cancer among females, confirming multiple US and European studies. Job tenure was linked to non-melanoma skin cancer among females, with borderline associations for melanoma and non-melanoma skin cancers among males. Now, this information was based on a 2014 to 15 survey of 5,366 US flight attendants. It is worth noting that the CDC did their own study on flight attendants and they did not find the same correlations that the Harvard School of Public Health did. The research with Harvard is ongoing, however, and data continues to be collected. Now, if you want to check out this study, you can visit the website listed above. This stands for the Flight Attendant Health Study, and I'll give you just a second if you wanted to write that down or take a screenshot. So, of course, airline pilots are also impacted, not just flight attendants. Research has also shown an increase in specific cancers as well as altered circadian rhythms and other negative health outcomes among pilots. If you wanted to look a little bit deeper into that research, You can find it at disciplesofflight.com. And I'll give you a second if you wanted to take a screenshot of this slide or to write it down. So it's just worth remembering that we're talking about flight personnel who spend a great deal of time in the air every week, every day. You know, it's their job. They're in the air significantly more often than most of us. You know, the general population has a tiny fraction of this exposure, so I don't want you to worry about this too much. Of course, if this is your career and you are a flight personnel, it may be worth looking into a little bit deeper and assessing your own health. There are solutions though, right? Of course, here at SYB, we're about solutions, not doom and gloom. And there are numerous things you can do to protect yourself while flying. In fact, I was so excited about this opportunity to help others learn about the tips I use when I fly, I decided to create an entire course around it. So we launched the course a couple of months ago, and I have just been thrilled with the feedback that we've gotten. The course is called 4 Steps to Flying Healthier and Feeling Better, and it's been really, really exciting to see so many people put these steps into place and report to us that their experiences of traveling are much better. And, you know, we save them a day or two sometimes of adjustments, and they're feeling better throughout the entire trip. So I could not be more happy about that. So when I was putting the course together and I started to dig into the topic, there was just so much information that I knew I couldn't fit it into just a webinar like we're doing now. The course is packed with information ranging from what it means to be electrohypersensitive, how EMFs impact the body, how to lessen your symptoms to EMF, how to prepare for the flight, what to do when you get on the plane, what to do immediately after the flight, what to do at your destination, and a lot more. So I am going to do my best to bring you some of the main points today. Of course, if you want to dive deeper into the course, just a really quick overview of what it entails. It has 7 modules, over 2 hours of videos, 30 plus handouts and checklists, and over 1.5 hours of bonus videos teaching you how to test your home, your hotel, or wherever you're staying. Okay, but we're only here for a short time, so I want to give you my best takeaways from the course so you can start implementing them right away. So as a quick reminder, or possibly as a quick introduction for those of you that don't know how EMFs impact our bodies, let's take a look at how electromagnetic fields impacts our health. Now, this is important to know so that we give you the correct solutions and that you know why I am recommending the certain things I am, because you'll begin to see the correlation between how EMF affects our body and then the solutions that we're going to give you. So ultimately, it comes down to oxidative stress. Thanks to the work of researchers like Dr. Martin Pall, Professor Emeritus from Washington State University, we know that EMF exposure causes oxidative stress on a cellular level. If you haven't looked into the work of Dr. Pall, I encourage you to do so. He has some great videos you can find on YouTube. So what Dr. Pall and other researchers have found is that when a cell is exposed to non-native EMFs, they activate the voltage-gated calcium channels. We know there should be abundant calcium on the outside of the cell, but when there's too much on the inside, that's when problems arise. So Paul and other researchers have shown that all EMFs activate the voltage-gated calcium channels in the cell membrane and increase intracellular calcium ions. Now, these increased intracellular calcium ions can act to stimulate nitric oxide synthesis, and this leads to the creation of peroxynitrite, which leads to free radicals and ultimately oxidative stress. This oxidative stress leads to a host of symptoms, including all of those you see here, plus more. This is by no means an exhaustive list. Now, I don't know about you, but for me personally, whenever I fly, I experience insomnia, tinnitus or tinnitus, which is ringing in the ears, irritability, anxiety, headaches, blood sugar imbalance, weakness, and heart palpitations. Of course, this is not only because of the EMF exposure, but from the entire experience of traveling. So that leaves us the question with, what do we do about it? So this brings me to my first tip, which is to take antioxidants. So antioxidants, of course, are the way to combat oxidative stress, right? Antioxidant. And you can get these antioxidants from your food. You can also get them from supplements. Now, I'm sure that most of you know that antioxidants come from our deeply pigmented, color-rich fruits and vegetables. So like they say, eating the rainbow is a great idea. And while you're making your food choices, you want to start even a few days, well, you want to do this all the time because we're all exposed to EMFs, but when flying, you really want to concentrate this a few days before you fly and think about loading up on these foods and bringing them with you when you fly, because we all know how difficult it can be to find good choices in airports and while on the road. So I always have food with me and I bring it on the plane, and they let me, and as long as it's not a liquid, I bring as much food on the plane as I want. So the reality is that you might not be able to make the best choices while you're on the road. So supplementing with antioxidants is a great tool. This is something I've been doing for many years, and it makes a huge difference for me. I use so many different supplements depending on how long my flight is, how I'm feeling, what kind of things are going on in my life, what I'm going through. But it would be way too complicated to try and explain it all in this short session here. So I narrowed it down to my top 2 favorites. And I gotta tell you, this was very challenging. I have such a great list and I cover them all in the course, but these are the 2 that I simply will not fly without, no matter what. And they're very accessible and relatively inexpensive. So that's why I chose these 2. And those would be magnesium and rosemary. Now, magnesium is a mineral. It's not an antioxidant, but it is the ultimate calcium channel blocker. So if you're not already taking magnesium, you really want to consider it. Remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving medical advice here. If you decide to try a specific supplement or diet, you always want to check with your doctor first. That said, magnesium works really well to combat the effects of the artificially opened calcium channels we get from EMF exposure. In addition, magnesium has numerous benefits, including supporting energy production, cardiovascular health, nervous system regulation, musculoskeletal health, and a lot more. It's one of my favorite overall supplements by far. I'm a big fan of taking magnesium in supplement form so that you can get a concentrated amount, but there are some notable food sources of magnesium that are worth mentioning. So some of the highest sources would be spinach, pumpkin seeds, almonds, lima beans, and everybody's favorite, chocolate. These are all good, healthy food choices that you can add to your daily diet, although be aware that for anyone that deals with oxalate issues or kidney stones, spinach, chocolate, and almonds are not your friend, and they are best avoided. But pumpkin seeds, lima beans, those would be pretty okay. Now, rosemary is one of the most underappreciated plants, in my opinion. Everyone loves to talk about turmeric, blueberries, kale, and these so-called superfoods, but little old rosemary hardly gets much attention, which I think is sad, because it has some really impressive research on the radioprotective benefits, specifically regarding rosmarinic acid. And that's the active component that protects against radiation. So I really love rosemary for these benefits, but also because it's so readily accessible. You can cook with it, drink it in a tea, take it in a capsule, use it in the air as an essential oil, or my favorite way of taking it, which is in a tincture form. So I just love rosemary, and it's one of the few spices that I actually use almost every day. Okay, so those are my top 2 supplements to use while flying or anytime you're in a high EMF environment. And that brings me to tip number 2, which is to use protection devices. Now this one may be a little more obvious to you, or perhaps you're already doing it, but there are a few important things that I need to point out here. When I say protection devices, I do not mean pendants, necklaces, harmonizers, chips, all these subtle energy devices. There's an awful lot of these types of products out there, and the fact remains that we really can't scientifically verify if they actually work. Now, if you use these and get benefit from them, then by all means go for it. But there's not a single product I have come across that has consistent results for a number of people across the board. More importantly, I have seen many people feel better when they begin using an item like this, but then weeks or months later, they actually feel worse. And that's just not a risk I'm willing to take. What I prefer are actual fabrics or items that specifically block EMF with physics. The items that most of my clients have success with are things like hats, blankets, shawls, scarves, etc. We can definitely verify these work with our professional grade equipment because the metal, usually silver or copper, in these products are actually blocking and deflecting the radio frequency. Now, it's important to note that not everyone feels benefit from clothing or fabrics. While most people do, there are some people that might actually feel worse when wearing them. So this is something you definitely want to give a test drive before you go flying. And there are a few reasons for this. One, not all products are created equal. Some companies produce low quality items with cheap materials that don't work or off-gas chemicals. Obviously, we don't want that. This is truly a situation of you get what you pay for. Of course, I'm a big fan of the Shield Your Body products, which are made with the highest quality materials and really do work. I've tested most of the products and have been very impressed by their efficacy. I do discuss a few different brands in the course in addition to Shield Your Body. There's several others out there that I like as well. Shield Your Body is not the only one, and I do cover those inside the course. So another reason some people don't do well with clothing is that they might be in a high electric field environment, and the clothing might actually attract these fields. Most sensitive people I know solve this problem by wearing an underlayer with the protective fabric over it so it's not directly touching their skin, and this can often reduce that uncomfortable feeling if that's a problem. For many people I know, however, using the protective clothing or fabrics can be what makes flying tolerable, versus without it, they wouldn't be able to fly at all. Okay, and so my third and final tip, which is a little more elusive but incredibly important, is to create a resilient body. So what do I mean by that? Creating resiliency means that you support your body, every aspect of your body, to be as healthy as possible, including your physical, emotional, and mental health, so that when you're exposed to insults like EMF, you will be able to handle them with much more ease. Your body's defense mechanisms will take care of the stress, and you'll feel much less symptomatic as a result. As you can imagine, this is a very big topic, and in fact, the majority of the course is spent identifying all the ways that you can create resiliency. The hard truth is that most of us are not giving enough attention fully to our physical health, our mental health, and our emotional health. Some of us are great at exercising every day, eating a great diet, sleeping well, yet we neglect working on our past traumas. Some of us dive head first into healing our emotions, but can't find the discipline to move our bodies and eat well. Some of us try really hard to do all three, but think we can figure it out on our own, but really could use some guidance and some professional help. And some of us just like to ignore it all and keep searching for that magic pill or supplement. And I have to be honest, I've been guilty of all three of these at some point in my life. So if you can relate to what I'm saying here, don't feel bad. We're all human after all. But the truth is that all the magnesium and rosemary in the world, while very helpful, will not be enough if we don't work on our bodies first, all parts of our bodies. So this is an area that if you have neglected, it's just a friendly reminder that putting some attention here can bring you some, healing. It can bring you a tremendous amount of healing, which will leave the body in that parasympathetic state we all desire and out of that sympathetic state, which is that fight or flight response. And when our mental and emotional body are healthy, our physical body will be too. I can't tell you how many people I know who have suffered from physical ailments for years, maybe even decades, including being sensitive to EMFs, that found almost complete recovery from their symptoms when they finally addressed their past traumas and emotional scars. No, I'm not saying it's easy, but this is an area that must be addressed if we truly want to enjoy optimal health. And when we do, everything becomes easier, including travel. So, beginning this journey today will yield massive results weeks, months, and even years later. Like I said, we talk at length on this topic inside the course, but I do want to leave you with at least one powerful tip you can start using right away to begin to shift your body into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the first step to creating a resilient body. And that would be to practice your favorite breathing techniques. This may sound overly simple, but trust me, there is no more effective way to instantly bring your body into a calm and relaxed state. There's several different methods out there, and if you have a favorite, great, but my two favorites are the 4-7-8 breath and the Wim Hof breathing technique. These are both incredibly powerful breathing techniques I recommend to all of my clients. They're simple, free, quick, and you can find guided instructions for both of these online. Again, that's the 4-7-8 breath and the Wim Hof breathing technique. I suggest you do at least one of these daily for the most profound results. In fact, what I want to do now, since we have time, is to play a quick 3-minute video by Dr. Weil, who famously teaches this technique, so that we can do it all together. So I teach this technique a lot to my clients and throughout my programs, but I find Dr. Weil's voice to be especially soothing and calming. It's just like the perfect tone for teaching this practice. So now I want to play this video for you, but I want everyone listening to really try and tune in here. If you're distracted, I suggest you stop other tasks, maybe take a second to close the door, turn off your phone, which I really, really hope your phone is already off, and just take a second to get comfortable. If you want to sit on the floor, that's fine. If you want to sit in a chair with good posture, that's fine too. Just take a second to get quiet and comfortable. Now, remember, this video is only 3 minutes. If you do one thing for yourself, take these 3 minutes today. 3 minutes. You can do this. Just take these 3 minutes today to really relax. Don't worry about what's next. Don't worry about what you're having for dinner tonight. Just take a second to tune in to this video and really practice with us here.
The famous 4-7-8 breath, the relaxing breath that I teach to all patients and doctors and students and friends, another yoga breathing technique. In this, you try to keep your tongue in the yogic position, touching the tip of the tongue to the ridge of tissue just behind your upper front teeth, like that, and try to keep it there the whole time. You breathe in quietly through your nose to a count of 4, and you hold your breath for a count of 7, and then blow air out forcefully through your mouth. Helps if you purse your lips out and you make a whoosh sound when you do that. So the exercise begins by letting all the air out through your mouth. Then you close your mouth, breathe in silently to a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, out through your mouth audibly to a count of 8, and you will repeat this for 4 breath cycles. Looks like this. That's it. You must do this at least twice a day. You can do it more frequently if you want, but never more than 4 breath cycles at one time, at least for the first month. After a month, if you're comfortable with it, you can increase to 8 breath cycles, and that's the absolute maximum. It's desirable to slow the whole exercise down as you practice it. What limits you is how long you can comfortably hold your breath, but as you practice that, you'll get better and better at it. And after doing this for 4 or 6 weeks, you can begin trying to use it for things. If somebody says something that pushes your button, you do this exercise before you react. It's a great way to deal with cravings. It's a great way to help you fall asleep. If you get up in the middle of the night for any reason, get back in bed, you do the exercise, you'll fall asleep easily. After 2 months, 3 months of regular practice, there are very significant changes that happen in physiology. This lowers heart rate, it lowers blood pressure, improves digestion. It is a very powerful anti-anxiety measure, in fact, much more powerful than the anti-anxiety drugs that are commonly prescribed. Takes no time, needs no equipment, very time and cost effective. Everything to recommend it, so I urge you to begin practicing this.
Okay, so how did that feel? I know I'm super relaxed, and honestly, I didn't want to come back right now, but you can see how very simple this technique is. And I hope for you that you can feel the difference and you're feeling inspired to start doing this regularly. So like he says on the video, the more you do it, the more benefit you get from it. So it is important to practice regularly so that you build up all of the benefits that this very simple yet powerful breathing technique can bring you. Now, I've been doing it for about 20 years, and I find it to be one of the most valuable tools I have for supporting my nervous system. I actually like the Wim Hof method even better. I find for me personally, it gets me even deeper into a state of relaxation, and it's even more profound than the 4-7-8 breath. It does take a little bit more commitment. It takes a little bit longer. So, you're going to have to figure out which one works best for you. But if you haven't discovered Wim Hof's breathing method, I highly recommend it. And you can find his instructions and more information about him and the technique online. All right, and that's pretty much it. Those are my 3 big tips to help you travel healthier and feel better, especially while flying. So these are the absolute minimum steps I take every time I fly, but really I do a whole lot more. Like I mentioned, I lay it all out in the course for you, which I could talk about all day because I'm just so proud of it and, so happy with the feedback. Helping people achieve a healthier, happier traveling experience has meant the world to me. So I hope you learned a lot today. I hope you dive into the course to learn even more. And I hope that you enjoy your next adventure more than ever, wherever your next adventure may take you. Thank you so much for watching today, and we will see you next time.
Okay, don't everyone stay tuned. We're still here. Thank you. Oh, I didn't share my screen. Give me 1 second. Thank you so much, Cathy, for that amazing presentation. Well, and for, sharing your top tips. I saw there were a couple of people late in the room who asked to summarize the top tips. I'll just say a replay link will be sent to you tomorrow. So yeah, you can watch this at your leisure. I also will note before I continue here, I saw a bunch of questions come into the QA pod, which is great. We'll get to those in just a couple of minutes. And if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A pod. Yeah, okay, so I was actually talking to Cathy earlier last week and telling her how this year I've implemented some of the lessons. It's funny, Cathy also has a sleep course, but I was implementing some of the lessons from this course on traveling. and my sleep has dramatically improved. In fact, I'm getting the best sleep that I've had in over 10 years, and I'm not even taking melatonin anymore, which, I thought, melatonin, that's pretty lightweight. It's not like a drug or anything. That's pretty safe to take. But now I don't even need that. And it's just sort of amazing to lay down and close your eyes and fall asleep. Like it sounds silly to say it, but it really is an amazing feeling. So I say that because I know how much of a difference this type of information can make to people, because it made a huge difference with me. And as Cathy mentioned, what she shared here is just a small selection of the knowledge that she has accumulated in her own personal journey and her work with clients all over the country. So if you want to feel better while traveling, it is so exciting to realize that Cathy has assembled all of these tips into a course, which she mentioned a couple of times during the presentation. And this is the Fly Healthier course, with over 3.5 hours of videos, more than 30 PDF guides and handouts, 8 bonus expert interviews, over a dozen blood sugar balancing and gut healing recipes. This program has everything you need to know on how to reset your body back into a state of health so you can finally get the sleep that you deserve. So we've thrown in a bonus module on how to test your home for EMF, and the value of this course is well over $2,500. We've actually seen similar courses priced at $5,000 and higher, and they don't have all the great information that's contained in this course. But Cathy and I knew that if we priced it at what it's worth, not enough people would have access to the information. We know that $2,500 is a lot of money, especially with how much we're all spending today on just get basics like gas and produce, even for information that's this important and essential to the quality of your life. So we talked about making it available for $500, which is more than fair for the value in the course and the results that you'll see. But again, with everything going on, Cathy and I wanted to give more people access to this vital information. So we decided to make this workshop available for just $99, because that's an incredible value, because it includes 7 modules, over 3.5 hours of video lessons, 30 PDFs, all from a certified building biologist and EMF expert, which you can experience from the comfort of your own home on your own schedule with 1 full year of access. And again, that's for $99. But tonight, for all of you in attendance on this webinar, we're making this amazing course available to you for just $69 with the coupon code FLYWELL. And remember, we're offering you a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you're not completely satisfied with the amazing information you're getting, just contact us for a complete refund. Nothing to return, no hassle. So in order to claim this one-day special offer to get Cathy's Fly Healthier course for just $69, you'll go to shieldyourbody.com/flyhealthy and enter the code FLYWELL at checkout. And that's through midnight tonight, Pacific time. Okay, so that was the presentation, that was the pitch, and now we will get into Q&A. And the Q&A has gotten longer since I last looked at it. So, okay, Cathy, are you reaching flight attendants and pilots? And I guess another way of asking that question is, are you through your work, are you in contact with people who do this vocationally, and the types of concerns that they should have and the benefits that this kind of information could bring them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if I'm trying to turn my camera on, or if you want to allow me to turn my camera on, yeah, just so it's a little bit more engaging for people.
Yeah.
Not really. I haven't really talked to many flight personnel. There is a great article that I reference in the program that was written by I think it was written by a pilot. Maybe I might have talked about it in here earlier. It was written by a pilot. So there are a few people in that community that are aware of it, but by and large, not really. I wish I was reaching more flight attendants and pilots. I don't have, I don't know a lot of people in that community, and I'm also, I don't want to be a fearmonger. I don't want to walk around and make people nervous when, that their job might be a risk. So there's a fine balance there. I agree, though, that it would be awesome to reach that community so that we can have open conversations about it. I guess I just haven't figured out how to do that appropriately.
Nope. That's a great answer. Thank you. And in terms of the camera, I do not know what's going on with Zoom. And I don't want to switch host because I'm the one recording, and I'm afraid it would interfere with the recording.
Okay.
So this is the first time that's not allowed both of us to share a camera at the same time. They keep changing everything in Zoom every day.
True. Yeah.
So, okay, let's continue. So anonymous attendee asks, would the course have enough helpful info for people who don't fly, but want to know how to protect themselves during regular travel?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. So, it's all about, the course is all about addressing how and why the body is responding to a high EMF environment. And it doesn't really matter if you're on a train, in a car, in a plane. I mean, there's a few things, like, I give the tips about, getting a pat down instead of going through this scanner, but that's the small thing. So yes, it's about, protecting the body from the inside out. And then, again, most of my clients who are especially sensitive have had a big event in their life, a precursor in their life, something that has made them more symptomatic. And a lot of the course talks about what those precursors are and how to address those precursors, so that you can be less symptomatic. And then on the other end, combating the oxidative stress that we all get invariably when we're in a high EMF environment. So yeah, it doesn't matter if you're flying or not, you'll still get benefit.
Thank you. Okay, Lynn asks, I was recently at a conference in Boise, and one of the vendors had EMF rocks for protection. So I'll jump in there. I mean, Cathy did talk about the types of solutions that protection solutions that she recommends, and the kind that she doesn't particularly recommend. Here, since this is an SYB webinar, we don't talk about specific brands, but I will share this link to a video that I did. Geez, I guess it's a couple of years ago now. It's only an 11-minute video. It's in the chat pod. And that is how I advise people to evaluate and consider EMF protection options, because there are a lot of them. Now, Cathy, Lynn had a second part of her question, which is what type of magnesium, i.e. glycinates, citrate?
That's great. So Lynn, I was at that conference, so sorry I didn't meet you. That would have been great. But yes, I was at that conference, and there's a couple of vendors with those products. But like Ar said, you could follow up on that video to learn more about, how we feel about harmonizers and subtle energy devices. So magnesium, yes. So that's a great question. And I do talk a bit about that in the course, but it depends on the person, really. So, glycinate has glycine in it, which is great for stress and anxiety. Citrate is citric acid, which can move the bowels a little bit, which for some people, that's a good thing. I mean, this may be TMI, but we're going for it here. So, when I travel, and a lot of people, when they travel, they get constipated and they get a little bit backed up. So having something like a magnesium citrate or a magnesium oxide can be helpful for that. Then there's malate, which is great for muscle tension, people who have some kind of fibromyalgic type symptoms. And then there's threonate. I'm a big fan of the threonate because it can cross the blood-brain barrier, and it can help with cognition, if you're really struggling with brain or cognitive issues. And there's formulas where you can get, several of these in one. So it really depends on what you're after. Any magnesium is going to be good for the calcium channel blocking. But, if you want to get really specific, it just kind of depends on, what's good for you personally.
Thank you. Okay. Mark asks, I bought an EMF protection shirt. Will I have issues going through TSA with this on? So I'll jump in here, Cathy. Feel free to add what you'd like. If you're investing the kind of money into an EMF protection shirt, then you should also be the kind of person opting for a pat down, because that is an option at every US airport and most airports around the world, to my understanding. I mean, definitely in the US, but I think most around the world, you do not have to go through those scanners and you can opt for the pat down. The second part of that answer would be if that product actually works, and there's one brand I know that makes really good shirts. If that product actually works, you will be subjected to the pat down anyway. In my case, when I travel, I often bring my laptop, my SYB laptop pad with me, which goes into my carry-on. And I'd say about 50% of the time that triggers an inspection of my carry-on. So it all, when you're walking through the millimeter wave scanner, EMF protection clothing, if it's really working, that will definitely trigger a pat down. If it's packed in your carry-on, that may or may not, depending on what they're paying attention to that day. Anything to add, Cathy?
Yeah, agreed. I've never gone through one of the scanners. I've always gotten a pat down. I've never had a problem. I haven't done a lot of international travel recently, so I don't know the status on that, but I know you have, and it sounds like that's okay. The other thing, a tip that I didn't put in the course, which I wish I had, is that if you travel more than a couple times a year, or even a couple times a year, getting the TSA pre-checked is worth it. So it costs something like $80, and you sign up through some government website, and it's pretty simple. You just have to, they give you an appointment, you show up to a spot, you fill out a piece of paperwork, and that's it. And then a couple months later, you get a TSA pre-check number, which allows you to go through the quick line and the metal detector instead of the scanner. So it saves loads of time. I mean, in fact, I traveled this Sunday, as a matter of fact, for some work, and I almost missed my flight. They told me I could not check in because my driver got me there late. They said, we're shutting everything down. And then my driver was like, no way, go through security. So I ran to security. They're like, yep, you can do it. You can make it. I had 3 minutes, and they hushed me through the TSA pre-check. I made it. It all worked out great, and I never would have made it without that. So it's valuable.
Great tip. That's a great tip. Thank you. Okay. Anonymous asked, did you say that rosemary is easiest/best using a tincture?
Yeah, I think so. You just get a higher concentration of it, so you get more benefit. And it's easier to find. There's rosemary capsules out there, but it's usually just the ground up rosemary. But if you do the tincture, it's concentrated, so you're going to get a more effective dose, in my opinion.
Thank you. Okay, another anonymous question. Why is it the case that certain bodies attract electric fields with EMF protective shielding clothing and others don't? I don't understand how that can be, given we all have the same type of outer skin layer.
Yeah, so there's a couple of thoughts here. One, it has to do with just sensitivity. So some people are going to react negatively to those electric fields. Some people aren't going to react to those. So some of it is just, I might feel it, you might not, kind of thing. And there hasn't been a lot of really, well-controlled scientific research on body voltage per se while you're wearing some of these pieces of clothing, and some of them are different as well. Some of the clothing has the silver threads exposed to the outside, which is going to be in direct contact with the skin, versus some of them, the silver is on the inside and it's coated with cotton or some kind of other fabric, so that your skin isn't directly touching the electric field. So, obviously, if it's directly touching your skin, it's going to be more conductive. And then we also have different levels of perspiration, which can change the conductivity of your skin. Bigger people are going to have more surface area. So there's a lot of variables to why some people do well with this clothing and some don't. We're all going to attract those fields similarly to some degree via physics, but these other variables make it to where some people respond differently than others.
Thank you. Another question, can we find the Dr. Wheel video on YouTube?
Yeah, I just Googled it, comes right up.
Yeah, and so that's Dr. Wheel 478, yeah?
Yeah, Google or put in your search engine, Dr. Weil 478 breath.
Oh, Weil, not Wheel?
I say Weil. I think it's Dr. Weil.
Okay.
Either way, tomato, tomato.
Yeah, he doesn't look like the kind of guy who'll get upset either way, so.
Right.
Yes.
He does
If he
his
does, he'll just
478
breathe
breathing.
a few
Yeah.
seconds and get over it. Okay, another question. What do you think of hydrating on the plane? I'm a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of hydrating in basically every context in which a bathroom is an option.
I think it's very important. I have a whole module on it actually in the program about different ways to hydrate and different methods of hydration which are better than others. I'm super interested in that topic, and I'm glad you asked, because I talk about some research by Dr. Pollack with exclusion water, easy zone hydration, and get into different ways different things you can do for your water to make it more hydrating. So yes, absolutely, very, very, very important.
Thank you. What do you think of taking nattokinase to prevent blood clots prior to going on the plane?
Sure, great. I mean, that isn't something that I put in the course. I didn't talk to that, but I love nattokinase. I'm a big fan of enzymes. You know, obviously somebody who's on a blood thinner or something's not going to take that, but I mean, I think enzymes are fantastic. You know, you do have to get a good quality. Some enzymes aren't as high quality as others, but yeah, why not? I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Okay. What do you think of applying colloidal silver in the nostrils to prevent being sick on the plane?
Sure. You know,
Okay.
I also think colloidal silver is a good product. It's definitely antimicrobial. Of course, you want to, again, source that you want to make sure it's a very good source. Don't overdo it. Not everybody does well with silver, you know, because in theory, you could accumulate some of that in the body if you don't have good detoxification. But I like it. What I do actually is use a nasal spray, something that has xylitol, maybe grapefruit seed extract. I'm a big fan of propolis, and I do talk about some of that in the course as well. Just because the silver metals for me aren't the best, but for some people it works well.
Thank you. And the questions are coming in faster than we are answering them. How do you recommend using fresh rosemary?
Oh, well, cooking, you know, I mean, I throw rosemary in pretty much, you can throw it in anything you're cooking, vegetables, meats, eggs, rosemary goes well with so many things, savory dishes. And then, you know, you can brew it in a tea. You could take fresh rosemary and brew it in hot water. It's lovely. It's wonderful.
Oh, really? I've never had that.
Yep. I mean, you know, again, store-bought rosemary versus something you grow in your garden is going to be a little differently aromatically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, fresh herbs in general, as opposed to dried store-bought, are going to be a lot more flavorful. Okay, not quite sure. What do you think of wearing an air purifier on the plane to prevent virus particles?
I've actually heard of some people having a tough time with that. As in the flight personnel, I don't know where they get caught up, but they haven't been able to bring it on the plane.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure
What are
why.
these, like wearable masks or something?
They have these little things that hang around your neck.
Okay.
And somebody recently contacted me saying that they I don't know if they confiscated it or they didn't allow it. Something happened where they didn't allow it. But remember on the planes that that air is going through HEPA filters constantly. Not that it's awesome, but it, you know, if you want to do a little personal air purifier that you can take on the plane, I don't really see any problem with that, except it is an electronic device. So it's going to be using batteries or some kind of, you know, electricity, of which some sensitive people might not respond well to, especially if it's like right against your body. But that airplane air is very, very well purified. Of course, if you have a seatmate right next to you that's not, you know, that's sick, that's a different thing. One trick that I like, and one of the things about COVID that I enjoyed was that I could have a mask and spray essential oils on it, air purifying essential oils on the mask, which you can still do. Get something like the Shield Your Body Neck Gaiter, which I travel with, which is silver, and spray some essential oils in your breathing space. I think that's kind of what I do.
Okay, thank you. Mark asks, when I fly, I get very bloated. Have you heard others complain of this?
Well, that's interesting. Well, not directly. I mean, I can say that when I fly, I get GI issues too, and I always contribute it to, I'm usually getting up way earlier than I want to. The food is, you're eating food on the run. Even though I bring great food with me, it's still not like I'm sitting down to eat at a table, in a relaxed environment. And it's usually, jerkies or prepared foods that maybe cause bloating in general. It's flying is stressful. So there's many variables. I don't know. Maybe there is something to just being in the air that causes that. That'd be interesting to look into further. But the whole event of flying in and of itself, I think, can cause these issues anyway.
Thank you. How often should you get up, move around the plane?
As often as you're able,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a tough one. If I just, as often as you can and is convenient.
Yeah, I always get, if I can, aisle seats,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can get up without any guilt of impacting somebody else. And on this most recent trip where I had an 11-hour leg, 11-hour flight, I got exit row bulkhead. So I on that 11-hour flight, I must have gotten up 20 or 25 times. Again, without any, like I could get up, didn't have to interfere with anybody. I could just walk a few feet right in front of me. And, it was, that part was actually kind of nice. And that was only like a $60 upgrade, which for an 11-hour flight was totally worth it.
100% worth it. Yeah.
Okay, would appreciate if you could mention some of the reasons that EMF shielded clothing fails other than it being made from low quality materials? Is it the ratio of how much of silver to other materials, or can the signals inside the plane and airport make it through between the cloth and the skin barrier, etc.?
Well,
Yeah, it's a broad question, but if you have anything responsive to that.
Well, I mean, why? Well, I guess my follow-up question to that would be, what's your definition of failing? Because any shielding product is going to reduce the exposure by a percentage. So nothing is 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to a degree. If you had a 20-foot wall of steel, that would be effective. But with shielding materials, they only achieve a percentage, which is very high, 95 to 99%, depending on the material. But if you've got a really high field, let's say you've got 1 million microwatts per square meter, you're still going to get, what would that be, 1,000 or whatever, which is still high.
Yeah.
Right. So that's part of that challenge. And then yes to the poor quality materials, yes to being less metal, more cotton or whatever the other material is. It depends on the specific brand. They're all going to be different. So you may be dealing with multiple variables here.
Yeah, to that I would just add care instructions. With any EMF apparel, you want to follow the care instructions as much as possible. So that is gentle wash. Usually, you always want to check the specific product, but gentle wash or hand wash with cold water, and then hang dry, not tumble dry hot. Because for instance, if you tumble dry hot, that can cause a fair amount of damage to the lattice work of the silver thread, and that can damage the shielding efficacy over time. Okay. Kamla asks, has anyone requested a flight without Wi-Fi as a medical accommodation for EHS, or are there Wi-Fi free flights available?
I have not heard of that. There are Wi-Fi free flights available. They're becoming more rare, but it's something like if you're, trying to book a flight, you're going to have to call the airline and ask,
Yeah.
which is a challenge. But when you're booking, depending on like if you go on kayak.com or something to look for flights, it will often tell you if there's Wi-Fi on the flight or not. But honestly, and I unfortunately have been flying more than I care to recently, just for work.
Well, any amount is more than you care to.
Yes, 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 absolutely. But I think 80-90% of the time there is Wi-Fi available. And if it's not, they usually say, we're sorry, our Wi-Fi is not working.
Yeah.
So it's becoming more of a challenge for that.
Yeah. Finding accommodations for wireless free experiences anywhere is becoming increasingly difficult. When I was going around Europe recently, because I haven't done this type of travel in a long time, there was Wi-Fi, there was free Wi-Fi everywhere. Like, you're going around these cities. I mean, it's not like you have to go into a cafe to get Wi-Fi. They have it blanketing the streets, and you can just join the networks.
Oh.
The last time, I've been around like that was a new experience for me. So actually finding accommodations without these types of connections seems increasingly rare, particularly in, the larger cities. JD asks, I'd like to better understand how to use an EMF blocking blanket during a flight. Is that covered in the course?
Well, I don't really give instructions on that. But it's you just want to encapsulate yourself as best you can. So, the challenge here is you could lay it over your lap, but then the backside of you is not covered. So you just wrap it around you. A shawl or a poncho is another great thing that I like, because it wraps all the way around. But you would essentially, just use it as a blanket that you would try to wrap around you as best as possible.
Thank you. Well, this is sort of what we were just talking about. What is the level of EMF in rail stations, urban subway systems with Wi-Fi, airports and other transportation hubs? Are there ways that we can glean or know which airports are highest or probably lowest in EMF? I'll just jump in and say, before handing it off to you, Cathy, like I was just saying, the level of EMF everywhere is really high. When you're in these massive transit hubs, it's going to be higher, often because of things like just by the fact of the number of people who are there, and then the capacity of the networks required to connect all of those people, not to mention all of the vehicles coming in and out and all the communication required to coordinate those vehicles, the businesses that are there, and so forth. But Cathy, please, off to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't know, this stuff's changing constantly. And we've got airport radar, which is its own thing. And then in rail stations, we've got the issue of dirty electricity and magnetic fields. Well, and you do have that to some degree on airplanes as well. So it's just the sheer nature of this high-speed transportation. That's how it works, basically, with EMF. So it's just, unfortunately, it's just going to be there.
Okay, thank you. Someone asks, does the class have Q&A session after taking the course?
We don't have that set up.
You and I've talked about possibly adding that at some point. Right now that's not into the course.
But it would be good. I think it would be a good thing to add.
Yeah. Okay. Point taken. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Let's see. April asked, do you have a course or webinar geared to people who have to spend time in a hospital and have CT scans, etc.? I had major surgery last week. My hospital bed following had a big Wi-Fi router directly over it. Luckily, I brought a hoodie with silver thread. Obviously, you can't wear protective clothing for a CT scan. What do we have content relevant for people who have to go experience what modern medical centers have become?
Yeah, that's That's a real challenge, and myself and my colleagues talk about this a lot, is the medical system, and hospitals are extremely high in EMFs all across the board for, in various ways. And then medical devices are becoming more and more connected, like continuous glucose monitors, hearing aids, pacemakers, all of these things. It's a real challenge, and it's an area that I would really like to get some education to these folks on. So the course doesn't get specific on those exposures, but again, it goes back to how to reduce the oxidative stress that you are getting from those exposures. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, with medical scanning and something, that's an unfortunate evil that we have to deal with sometimes. I shouldn't say evil. I mean, it's life-saving technology in a lot of situations. It's challenging for us, but we don't really have a lot of control over that. So I really focus on doing my tips on reducing the oxidative stress that we do get from those exposures.
Thank you. Okay. MA asks, how bad are airport scanners? TSA PreCheck gets to go through the machines that kids can go through. Then there's the newer scanners. I'm interested to hear what you think on this, Cathy. I will say, the first time, because I don't remember when they introduced these new millimeter wave scanners. They're not new enough for me to still be calling them new, but I was around when they were doing that.
Yeah.
And I opted for the pat down, and the guard was like, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Well, because I don't want the radiation." And she says, "Well, no, it just bounces off of your skin."
Which is why you use them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they've been around for about 20 years.
Okay.
I can remember when they first came out, and I wasn't even in this space of EMF. Like that wasn't on my radar, but I just intuitively said, I don't think so. And so they are millimeter wave technology, and I've had the same experience several times when I asked for a pat down, and the TSA personnel is like, "Oh, no, it's just the same as your cell phone." And I'm like, "Well, no, the technology's, it's millimeter waves versus blah, blah, blah," and they just they're not interested.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, how bad are they? That's a great question. And I get people, skeptics or people that don't want to hear it will often say to me, "Well, why would you even bother? Because you're getting all this other exposure." And in the world of building biology, we say that any reduction is worth achieving. Mm-hmm. So, and I often say, like, you could have, that's not a good analogy, but I mean, if I can avoid an exposure, I'm going to do it. And they are millimeter waves. So it's different. It is different than the frequency exposure that you're going to get from everybody's devices and from being in the airplane. So, how bad is it specifically? What's it going to do to your health? I mean, we can't quantify that at this time because there's not a lot of research to it, but we do know it's going to impact you on the ways that EMF exposure does. And if I can avoid it, I do. And that's why one of the reasons I got the TSA PreCheck, so I could just go through the metal detector, which isn't that big of a deal. And I think it's much better.
Okay. And MA wants to, I don't think he was a skeptic, or he or she was a skeptic, but
oh no,
see in the chat pod.
Yeah.
So I just to clarify.
No, I didn't think so at all. I'm just talking about in the world of.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, in my world, I have a lot of skeptics, and they ask me that question.
Yeah. Newer airplanes now have cell phone chargers underneath every seat. Most airports also have the chargers underneath every seat in the waiting areas. This seems to add a whole other level of EMF stress. Any suggestions?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. And so Deborah asked that question, and I've tested those seats several times, and some of them are really high and some of them aren't. They're not consistent.
Does it depend if something's plugged in or not?
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm assuming that there's some shielding going on, that some of the wires shielded in certain areas and not in others. I'm not entirely sure why some are higher than others. It's a little bit of a conundrum, but yeah, I mean, there's not a lot we can do in that situation. I mean, there is the thought that you could have some shielding because, silver, metal, different metals will shield electric fields, but I'm a little skeptical to recommend that because they can also attract, and it gets pretty complicated, and you'd have to test to verify what it's doing. So at this point, I don't really have a great answer for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd say it reinforces the importance of the resilience lessons that you were covering here and that you cover in the course, which is resting your body, building the physical and physiological resistance against this type of damage. Because, there's certain exposures that you can avoid, like opting for the pat down. And then there's other ones like, well, where are you going to wait? You have to wait in the waiting area. And so, don't stress the exposures you can't really do anything about. Okay. This is another question on the millimeter wave scanner. Okay, so this sort of touches, you touched on something like this in an earlier question, but aside from water, what are the best liquids that protect against EMF? And you would kind of hinted that there are certain types of hydration techniques that you find to be more hydrating or more effective.
Yeah, it's not specific water per se, but it gets specific to the person.
Okay.
So, but different way. I mean, electrolytes, certain things that you can add to water to make it more hydrating and more likely to get into the cell. Certain types of gel water, which tend to be more hydrating, but it is person dependent. So there isn't a drink per se, but different ways to get the water into the cell because of minerals and other gel-like structures.
Okay, thank you. I don't know how to pronounce this. Elson asks, is fasting an optimal health choice when traveling by plane? Or perhaps rephrased, does fasting have an impact on your physiological resilience while traveling?
Yeah, that is something I talk about in the course as well. And I do think it is a good option for some people, not everybody. So, not everybody is in a situation where they should be fasting. And again, I get into it in the course about who may or may not benefit from it. But if fasting is something that works for someone, I do think it can be helpful.
Thank you. Is there more radiation exposure on the inside or outside row? Is there radiation exposure above every seat where there's Wi-Fi and behind every seat? I mean, the short answer is you don't know unless you test. Like, there's no specific point in a plane where we know it's higher and where we know it's lower. There's too many variables to have a hard and fast rule. But Cathy, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's exactly right. There isn't, you can't say this seat, front of the plane's better, back of the plane's better. Every situation is completely different. So fortunately, we can't really say.
My Smith asked, what's the best way to wash EMF apparel? I said that a little bit ago, but I'll just quickly summarize. First, always check the care instructions that came with the product that you bought. In general, you would want to hand wash, but gentle cycle wash is also okay. Using cool water, room temperature water, not hot water, and then to hang dry. In terms of detergent, usually a small amount of any detergent is okay. There is a detergent that some people recommend called Tex Care, which is specifically designed for EMF shielding apparel, which you can consider purchasing and using. But in my experience and with SYB products, any sort of a small amount of gentle detergent is fine. Cathy, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you. Doesn't mean you can't use the dryer, just means you asked for the best way to wash items, and hang drying is better and will result in more endurance, a longer lifespan for your apparel. Oh, interesting. If we have the choice of time of day to fly, when is cosmic radiation lowest, and is it by a lot?
Well,
And also, well, no, answer that first, and then I'll get to the other parts.
well, night is better.
Okay.
Supposedly there's less cosmic radiation when the sun is low, when the sun's not blasting you.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, and I talk a lot about circadian rhythm in the course, that messes up your circadian rhythm, which I'm not a big fan of either. So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of splitting hairs.
Okay, so then the next part of the question is there, right, we already said there's not a, you can't say which part of the plane is best, but is there a difference between jumbo, medium, and small planes in terms of the types of exposures you can expect?
That's a good question. And I can't say I've had enough experience with that to give a definitive answer.
Okay.
I mean, just thinking about it, I would think that the smaller, tinier planes would have more because it's more compact and you're closer to the engines and you're closer to all the things versus being more spread out. But I don't want to say that because I have not measured enough to say specifically.
Yep. Okay. Good answer. Thank you. And great question. I wish we had
Yeah, that is a good question.
better answer for you, but those were great questions. Well, this is sort of philosophical. Does traveling by plane for health seem to contradict the trip reasoning for health? Is it like, how do you balance, if you're traveling for health, but then the trip itself harms you, how do you?
Yeah, I would say it depends on what it's for. I mean, if you're going to get, some kind of life-saving surgery, obviously you have to go through the travel. It depends on, I mean, if you're going for, I don't know, weight loss or cosmetic reasons, then I'd say, probably not. But if it depends on the reason, the bigger the reason, if it's life-saving or life-enhancing to some degree, then oftentimes it's worth it because the majority of the time we will recover from the EMF exposure. I mean, there are circumstances where an extreme exposure or extremely sensitive person, it can kind of set them back for a really long time. But, if it's one flight for this treatment, you can typically recover from that EMF exposure, in which case, if it's significant enough, I'd say it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, Cathy and I have, we see eye to eye on a lot of things. I think I'm more open to travel than Cathy. I mean, Cathy actually travels more than I do, but I'm more open to travel than Cathy is.
True.
But I would say, I wouldn't forego a trip just because of the damage it would cause. But if we're talking here about, traveling for health reasons, I certainly would consider a closer healthcare provider to one further away, right? If I have options about where I can go to get my health treated, I would pick the closer place because a shorter trip is generally going to be less impactful on your physiology. So that's where I would sort of channel that thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've been asked this before, not today, but Kamla's asking, what do you think of using a battery-operated PEMF device for grounding and support while in flight?
Well, that again kind of goes back to the person. I know some people that think that the PEMF devices are extremely helpful and valuable and they get a lot of benefit from it, in which case great, but sensitive people will react to them. I'm a little bit leery about electrical devices that are trying to do what nature does. There's negative ion machines and PEMF devices. PEMF devices are trying to get us to this human resonance or other frequencies, and it's like we can't really. I mean, we're fighting against nature to get back to nature, and I don't know. Inherently, I'm not the hugest fan, but I definitely know a lot of people that use these devices and benefit from it greatly. So it comes back to me where it'd be worth a try to see how you feel. And, otherwise we don't have data on that specifically to know whether or not it's a detriment or a benefit.
Yeah. Okay. What do you think of taking a bath with baking soda and sea salt to combat EMFs?
Sure. Yep. I'm a fan. I mean, I do talk about some of that in the course too. And yeah, go for it. Epsom
Okay.
salts. Epsom salts for the magnesium is great.
Is that better than sea salt?
I prefer it. I prefer Epsom salt because it's magnesium.
Okay. Thank you. Um, Someone asks, I also heard that vitamin E and or niacin can help with radiation.
Maybe. So, I don't like to recommend supplements specifically without knowing the health history of the person. Not everybody responds well to vitamin E. I don't take it because of some genetic markers, but it is an antioxidant. So it can be helpful because it's an antioxidant. Niacin can be helpful for a lot of reasons. But again, not everybody responds well to niacin either. So if you're taking them and they're beneficial to you, sure, great. Continue taking them, but I wouldn't just blanketly say everybody take it without knowing their history.
Thank you. Okay, actually, I'm glad someone asked this. For clarification, because I've never done TSA pre-check. For clarification, does the TSA pre-pass allow you to go through just a metal detector, no pat down, no millimeter wave scanner? Or
Correct.
What? Okay.
If you have TSA pre-check, you only go through a metal detector. You don't have to do anything else. And you don't have to take off your shoes. You don't have to take the stuff out of your bags. You don't have to do anything. You just go through the metal detector. But you do need to make sure that when you book your flight, your TSA number is on your boarding pass, or that you enter it. Otherwise, you'll show up at the airport, and if you haven't entered your number in your flight, then they'll make you go through regular security.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And how long have you been in TSA
Not
pre-check?
long. I've only been doing it, since January maybe.
Oh, so this year. Okay.
Yeah, and I messed up the first time. I didn't enter my number, which is how I
Okay.
know that they're going to make you go around.
But you're a fan now, it sounds like.
It's awesome. I mean, it's
Okay.
just so quick and convenient, and it saved me a few times on almost missing flights. So,
Yeah, I do that by being on time. But,
well,
however.
these were not under my control, let me say. I like to be on time too.
So Alice asks, regarding EMF blocking fabrics, is it okay to have copper infused? Which are the better shielding materials? So and Cathy, feel free to add to this. Let me find the actual, okay, here's the link. So I'm going to put this into chat. We actually have an article on the site explaining different EMF shielding materials. So I just put that into the chat. Copper is definitely a good EMF shielding material. It is hard to find apparel grade copper shielding fabrics, not impossible. But it is, and so when it comes to EMF shielding materials, there's broadly there's kind of two categories. There's the kind that you can have touch your skin, and the kind that maybe you don't want to have touching your skin. And so, like what we make our foam pouch out of, right? Since it's inside the pouch, it never actually touches your skin. We use nickel and cobalt. But if you were making apparel, you wouldn't want nickel and cobalt. You would want a material that's safer against the skin. And that would mean it is inert and it's antimicrobial and antibacterial and hypoallergenic. And so usually those, the best one is gold, but that is incredibly expensive. So what is often used is silver, which is a little bit less effective than gold, but a lot cheaper. And that's what we use in all of our power products. Copper is even cheaper than silver and still quite effective. And it meets all those other criteria I was mentioning for being against your skin. It's very hard to source that type of material. But you should see that post on EMF shielding materials for more information on all those differences. Cathy, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you did a good job covering that.
Thank you. Okay, Marley asked, should you board the plane last if possible and maybe even stand in a certain part of the airport while waiting? I would say this is where you get into, it always would depend, and Cathy, obviously this is for you to answer, but there's something I want to say here, and I keep hitting this banner behind me, which is, there's a balance here, right? You want to reduce your exposure to EMF to reduce physical stress. If I were waiting to be the last person on the plane, I would be stressing myself out, knowing who I am. I'd be like, oh, am I still going to find space to put my carry-on? Am I, all these problems. Or are they going to am I going to have to put the carry-on like 5 rows behind me? Are they going to make me gate check it? And then I have to wait. And so then I'd be stressing myself out, all in an effort to reduce my stress, which to me would be self-defeating. But Cathy, do you want to add?
I agree. You're getting it inside the airport, just, sometimes just as much as on the plane. So I wouldn't, I agree. Or I wouldn't stress out about that. I would just do what's the least stressful for you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anonymous asks, and this is related to what I was just talking about. Do any materials technically provide better EMF blocking than silver? Yes, gold. When we're talking about apparel, gold is the the gold standard. But again, the economics are such that silver is used just because gold is so much more expensive. Okay, we're getting to the end of the question queue here. This has been a really good list of questions. We've answered like 38 questions so far.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm seeing, and a lot of these have been really good questions. Okay, I don't know what this is, Cathy. So if you don't, we can just skip it. But what is your opinion on biofeedback technology / healing methods for handling with damage from EMF?
Yeah. So I'm open to it. Again, like biofeedback, same, energy medicine in some situations. Great. If it works for you, awesome. Do it. I haven't had a lot of success with it personally, but I know a lot of people who have. Again, this just comes back to bio-individuality and what works for you. I'm all for it if it works for you, and say, it's worth a try for sure. It's just a different modality of the other things, and I'm all for combining as many, protective behaviors or items as possible. And if that works for you, great.
Thank you. Okay, I like this one. Could you share your thoughts on wearing an EMF protective beanie that has a snug fit versus a cap, or whole EMF shielding pants and shirt relative to EMF blanket and poncho when on the plane? My thoughts before handing this off to Cathy are just the thing I want to add is, with all of these things, you want to get as much of your body covered as possible. Now, obviously, if you're wearing a cap or a beanie, you're not going to be covering your whole body. But if you're doing a trade-off between a beanie and a cap, you would think, which one is going to give me the best possible coverage? The same would be true versus a shirt or a blanket. Which one would give me the most possible coverage? Because the way that this stuff works is it's only protecting the part of your body that it is covering. Cathy?
I agree. Yeah, if you sometimes people don't do well with hoodies because you put the hood up and then there's gaps, and then the EMF, the radio frequency gets in through the gaps, and it can kind of bounce around, and we don't want that. So I like the snugness of it. The poncho's a little bit different because it kind of hangs down. So yeah, I agree. The more snug, the better.
Thank you. Okay, someone asks, my EMF clothing has been thrown into the laundry, unfortunately with hot water and hot dry with towels. Can I test to see if it's still effective? And the answer is yes. You can do that with the information included in the bonus module of the course. That is the Fly Healthier course, right, Cathy?
Yeah, it's got modules in there on, it's got a module in there on how to test radio frequency, which you can use, you basically use a RF meter for testing different shielding materials. So yes, you could test it.
Okay, thank you. Um, okay, so this question here is about grounding after a flight. Is there benefit to grounding on grass or a beach, and after a flight, and if so, for how long? And is there like a measurable benefit?
Yeah, I talk about that in the course as well. And so there are different ways to measure your response, like heart rate variability, blood pressure, different metrics like that that you can use. They're a little bit, uh, we need a little bit better specific metrics because there's a lot of things that can increase your blood pressure, your heart rate variability, et cetera. Not, and you're off the plane, you're less stressed, you're at your destination, it's beautiful, so your heart rate variability may change regardless. So some of the tests that we use for that to measure the benefits with grounding, there's multiple variables, so I don't know that there's a really solid way to say for sure, but I do talk about the grounding in the course, and I'm definitely a fan of it. In an appropriate environment. Saying that, the Earth in the US, for example, is electrified because we send our radio frequency, or what am I saying? We send our electricity back to the substations via the Earth because it's cheap. And so we do that for economic reasons, but you're standing on the Earth and then you've got these electric fields and contact current, which we don't want. So if you're on a beach, absolutely. I talk about that in the course, definitely go walk out there. But there are a few more variables to consider, which I don't have time to get to all of them, but I am a fan in general.
Thank you. Yeah, I am too. I'm a big fan of the beach, personally. I mean, everyone's a fan of the beach, but I mean, actually walking barefoot. I do like extended walks, barefoot walks on the beach, and it's important. Even though I have nice water shoes, like if I'm going in the water, I'll wear my water shoes. But if I'm just taking a walk on the beach, I'll definitely make sure to make it barefoot. Okay, let's see. You're grounding via. Yeah, I think we answered. Let's see. Okay, so I don't know what this term is, Cathy. So maybe you do. But is there any research on infradian rhythms and how EMFs impact a woman through her cycle?
That's very interesting. I don't know. I have not looked into that. It's, yeah, so infradian rhythm is a rhythm a little bit longer than circadian rhythm. It's just another kind of mammalian rhythm. And I don't know. I haven't looked into it. I would imagine, similar to circadian rhythm, you're getting different signals. You're getting these signals from EMFs that are different than what nature intended. So it would make sense to me, but I haven't seen the research.
Okay. And then also in regards to bed frames, or metal or wood better? I would say wood, but
Wood.
Cathy? Yep. Okay,
Wood.
good. I like simple. Wow. No one ever asks me a question that just has a one-word answer.
I love
really
it.
appreciate
It's great.
that. Yeah, that was really nice. Apparently I missed something. Hold on. Oh, so the question on grounding, the person is following up. Is there a window of opportunity? Like, is there a point in time after which doing grounding isn't going to help you recover from the flight? Like, is there a certain number, like, do you need to do it within the first 4 hours or the first day or
Well,
help even if
I
it's
like to do it as soon as you can.
Okay.
It probably at some point, if you do it a week from your flight, well, whatever, but it's just try to do it as soon as is feasible.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, I think that, Cathy, you have donated a fair amount of your expertise here today. And I know you're on site working, and I appreciate you making the time to come join us and the SYB community to share this information. For everyone, reminder that the replay link will be emailed out to you tomorrow. It'll come from the same address wherever you got the actual Zoom confirmation from. And so the link will be in that email. And the discount is through tonight, through midnight tonight Pacific time, for Cathy's Fly Healthier workshop, $69, 1 year of access. Just enter the code FLYWELL at checkout. And you can find that at shieldyourbody.com/flyhealthy, or you just go to, actually, I'll show you. Oh, I'm not in the, I'm still doing screen sharing, which is good. Hold on. Wow. I have too many windows and panels open everywhere. So if you go to the SYP website, you go to courses right there in the menu and just click Fly Healthier, and there you will find it. And again, you enter the code FLYWELL to claim this discount by midnight tonight. Thank you all so much for coming out, and we will see you at the next webinar.
Bye, everybody.